Hey everybody, Rick Powell here from Powell Fine Homes Group and Real Broker LLC. And we want to give you a quick update on what we're seeing in the market, not just the residential market, but the overall market. So, first off, I want to talk about new home builders. We're seeing a couple things happen that are unusual this early in the game, but we've seen with Boise Hunter Homes, for example, out in Dry Creek. They own that entire development, but they've started selling some of the lots to smaller builders. The homes still have the same feel, look, flow as a Boise Hunter home, so the community will still keep the same feel all the way through, but they're just offloading some of the risk by selling some of those lots to builders that are the same caliber, just not necessarily having the same pockets where they can build as much as Boise Hunter does. So that was an interesting development, we thought. Another thing we're starting to see, and I'm going to jump over here and show you my screen, we're starting to see entire subdivisions that have been purchased and planned out and gone through. This particular one right here is fully entitled and buildable. Sorry about that. Meaning they've gone through the entire permitting process. They've got it all platted out. You look down here and you can see that here's all platted out. They've got all of the permits necessary. You can just start moving dirt and building houses on this one. It's ready to go. So that's $3 million. That's down in Weiser, which is north of Ontario. It's right there on the border, in northeast of Ontario slightly. And then you have down in Middleton, you've got, this one is for $3.6 million, 13.5 acres, 40 lots. This one's pre-approved. Not the same as fully entitled and buildable, but they've got it platted out, and the city's already said yes, in principle you can do that. You still have to do the engineering and everything else that needs to be done for the permitting process. But we're starting to see some builders start backing out of that, so the dirt's going to sit there for a while, and we'll see what happens with that. While we're in the screen here, do a couple things. I want to recap with what's going on with inventory in general, not specifically for houses individually, but where we are at in inventory. And as you see on this green line, that's the median sales price. It came up, I think we peaked probably in May, at least in Ada County, right around $602,000, $603,000, and it's come down since then. The year-over-year number for December of 22 to December of 20 was up almost 11%. But from the peak, we're down about 11% right now as well. So it's nowhere near as bad as everybody said it was going to be. We're not 20, 30, 40%. And quite honestly, I don't think we're going to either. Because as you look at this right here, as the median price comes down, this is our inventory for Ada County. And it's been coming down, 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 down. We see in September we peaked out. We were probably like 2,500 units for sale. And right now, we're probably half of that. We're about, in Ada County, I think we're right around 1,250, 1,260 right now. So you see the attrition going on right there as it goes down that side. And what that's saying is we're not seeing a lot of new listings. And this is a national trend. It's not just Boise or Meridian or Eagle or Kuna. It literally is a fact that most home sellers are not coming on the market right now. Roughly 60 to 65% of all buyers in a market are step-up home buyers anyway. Well, I say step-up. They could be step-down too. They could be downsizing. Who knows? But about 60 to 65% of the people who buy a home any given year had to sell their home they were currently in to go into it. And because everybody's in such low rates, basically anybody that had the credit required to get a refinance is below 4% right now, and most of them are below 3.5%, and a good number of those are even below 3%. So why would you, unless you had one of the major movers like death, divorce, or a job transfer, why would you exchange your current house with a sub 4% mortgage to turn around and go into a house under current mortgage rates, which right now, let's see, I'll jump over here. I think there's about 6.5, 6.4. Last week it was 6.23. When I looked just a little while ago this morning at bankrate.com, it's 6.47. But because it dropped down to it as low as it did last week, mortgage demand jumped 28% from the prior week. And that number by itself doesn't mean a lot, but overall we're down 35% from the same week a year ago. But we're at the lowest rates right now since probably September, because October they jumped up really, really quickly and hit 7%, and that just threw the hard brakes on. If you look at the sales units, they really dropped off in November. But last week was the first big spike we've had in some time, simply because rates got down below 6.5, and everybody who were on the sidelines seriously looking but couldn't afford to pull the trigger wanted to pull the trigger and save that extra quarter point over the week prior and get in. So that's a nice sign. It's not that the market's turned around. It's not that we've hit bottom. I mean, nobody can call that anyway. But it's nice to see little signs of life here and there versus the lockup we've had since October, basically. So another thing I want to jump into while we're sitting here in the screen is share of mortgage loans in forbearance remains flat at 0.07%. So that's 0.7%, and that's all the loans in forbearance right now. On this graph right here, at the peak of COVID, this was back in May of 20. As soon as everything shut down, everybody who was working in the service sector, quite honestly, depending on what state you lived in, everything shut down or very little shut down. But in general, a lot of businesses shut down, and people panicked, and they called their banks. They said, look, I don't know what's going on. I need to go into a forbearance program where you let me not pay my mortgage for a few months, and then I'll catch up once we have some clarity on what's going on. And at one point, it was 11.83% of the people in the Ginnie Mae program. Then you look at Fannie and Freddie, which is this orange line, 6.5%. If you look at the overall total of all the loans, because Ginnie Mae, it's one of the government programs, it doesn't have anywhere near as many loans as FHA does, which is Fannie and Freddie, or VA, or some of the other ones. But anyway, I digress. Sorry about that. If you say 8.53 was the overall total in May of 20, you see it go down, 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 and now we're down at 0.7. So that's a very healthy place to be. Right now, all the people who got loans over the last 5-6 years, they had to qualify. I mean, they had to be able to pay the loans back. They had to have real credit. They had to have real jobs. They had to have real verifiable income, all the things that matter. So everybody's in a great credit position as far as their credit profile. Number two, everybody's in a great equity position. Even if you bought a house, I mean, you would have had to buy a house in October, November, December of 22 or January of 21 to really be feeling a squeeze right now. But even that doesn't matter as much as it did back in 2008. In 2008, we had what we call the liar loans, or Washington Mutual's infamous pick a payment, or Countrywide had a very similar program, where you could either pay interest only or either half your interest if you wanted to. The problem with that, though, is the other half of your interest that you hadn't paid got rolled into your principal, and then your note actually started growing instead of going down or just staying steady like it would on an interest-only loan. Once your note hit 125% of the original amount that it was issued for, it automatically converted into a fixed amortized 30-year loan with no options anymore. You just had to pay the full nut. And what happened then is all these people went from having a payment of $2,500 to north of $7,000 or $8,000. And of course, they couldn't keep their house, and we had the foreclosures everywhere, and it flooded everything, and the bottom fell out of pricing, and we had 35-40% erosion in prices in some markets. We don't have that risk right now. That's really important, and it doesn't get talked about enough. We really have a great position for the majority of the homeowners out there in that it doesn't matter what their house is worth. They're not worried about that. They have a payment they can afford. They know what it's going to be every month. The only variable is going to be what your insurance payment is and what your property taxes are. And as long as that number stays consistent, there's no reason to sell because, quite honestly, unless you're going for a cash out refi or going to sell your house, what your house is worth that day doesn't matter for most people. So with forbearances so low, which is a precursor to foreclosures, the crash bros that keep saying the market's going to disintegrate, they're in for more disappointment. We just really do have great credit profile for the homeowners of today. They're all in a good position. They know what their cost of holding the house is going to be. It's a consistent cost. The only variables are property taxes and insurance. Insurance is probably going to keep going up a little bit each year, but property taxes, the way it's going, they'll come down some. So if you're not selling your house, you're not doing a cash out refi, what it's worth doesn't really matter. So as we see less and less inventory coming on, the issue becomes, do we have a spring selling season? Because, we typically, especially here in the Boise area, once we get into the holiday season, everything kind of slows down and shuts down, if you will. So we're seeing little signs of life here and there, which is nice. But we're not seeing more inventory coming on yet. We're not seeing people saying, we're not getting all the calls saying, hey, I got to list my house, I got to list my house, I got to sell my house, I've lost my job. We're not getting those calls. So, where we're going to go this year, nobody knows, to be honest. If we do get a full-blown recession, interest rates will have to come down. That'll bring mortgage rates down. That will create demand. I mean, one of the underlying things that doesn't get talked about as well is the size of the Gen Y and the Gen Z population. Together, they're bigger than the boomer population was. And they're coming into peak first-time home buyer years right now. So We haven't had demand like this since probably the window of 1978 to 1982, 83. So the demand is there. It's just whether or not the ability is there. So we need to watch interest rates. We need to watch inventory. And if interest rates come down and if inventory comes up, then we probably are going to have a very good 23, or at least better than last year where half the year was locked up. If everything stays like it is right now, we're still going to see a lot of the buyers who are on the bubble staying on the fence. We'll see cash buyers having a field day. And, as mortgage rates fluctuate, when it comes down below 6.5, we'll see more people buying. If it gets below 6 into the 5s, I think we'll really start seeing movement. If it gets below 5.5, then we'll start seeing multiple offer situations and some of the things we saw back in the spring and summer of 2022. If you want us to cover a specific topic in real estate or a specific area here in the Boise area, drop a comment, give me a call, 208-872-8108, or send an email to sold@powellfinehomesgroup.com, and we'll be sure to get it online. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.